Hello, hello. Welcome to Courage Becomes Her, where we connect and share real life stories. I'll talk with women whom I love and am inspired by, women who are experiencing life just like you and me. I'm excited for us to gather together and cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in life and work.
Our desire to fix and control is mighty. But I think really friending well has to be governed with our knowledge of what our responsibility is. And on that, I mean our ability to respond. And when we try to be someone's savior or mother, that's beyond the scope of what I can really do. And so if I try to go in that with that as my role, I'm going to fail. It's not respecting them and their own journey of exploration and consequences of their own choices. So to step back and think, well, my responsibility is to let them know that they're supported by me. I'm praying for them, but I can't carry their burden any further than the foot of the cross, and then I have to put it down.
That was Sherry Hougard. Sherry is a lifelong California beach gal, girl after my own heart. She has been married for 30 years and has 3 adult children, and she's spent the last 20 years helping women learn to tell their stories and to find beauty in whatever season of life that they're in, including the mundane moments. I am so grateful to have Sherry join me for today's episode of Courage Becomes Her. We are continuing our conversation about friendship, and it is just such an honor and a privilege to me that I get to have such incredible women and friends and people from my life join us for these conversations. So today, Sherry and I are talking about transparency and vulnerability in friendship. We also talk about being a part of each other's lives during different seasons and how to know when a friendship is coming to an end or when it's, the end of a season of a friendship. We also talk about what it looks like to bear each other's burdens in friendship, and Sherry's insights and thoughts and experience on that are just so helpful, insightful, as well as burden lifting rather than kind of mounting even further burdens on us. So I'm really grateful for that part of our conversation. We also talk about a topic that has really been weighing heavily on my mind over the last couple of years of what it looks like to be a good friend and how we step out of this idea of self-preservation and self-focus and really learn how to not have our friendships be about us, but really be able to focus on our friend rather than our own needs or our own wants and desires. So I really love that conversation. We also talk about Sherry's journey of finding friendship with God through conquering mountains, through literal mountains, conquering literal mountains, and how her vulnerability with God has just opened up a whole new perspective for her, including in her friendships. So thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation with Sherry about friendship. Sherry, thank you so much for joining me today for Courage Becomes Her. I'm really glad to have you with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we're going to talk about friendship and a couple of different aspects of friendship here in a moment, but let's get to know you first. So tell us about where is home and a little bit about home life.
Okay, I was born and raised in San Diego and went to Claremont High School, which was what Fast Times at Ridgemont High was based upon. So that's that little claim to fame. And I got married. I moved from the Mission Bay area up to Oceanside with Steve. And then we came a little bit further south and have been in Encinitas area for 27 years.
Wow. Oh, gosh. Yeah. And you guys are kind of empty nesters?
Kind of empty nesters. In this day and age, they go and then they come back and they go and come back a little bit. So anything can happen at any point in time, but they have We have three kids. 27-year-old lives in Portland. 22-year-old son lives in Montana and is living his best life. And then our 20-year-old daughter is at home and doing online college and working. And we see her occasionally when she drops in for some food or a shower.
Oh, wow. All right. So yeah, definitely a different season for sure, which I know we'll talk a little bit about in our conversation. So Southern California, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So what was your first concert? That had to have been interesting.
Well, that was funny. I'm not a big live concert person. So I've been to 4 or 5 in my lifetime. And the first one, a girlfriend wanted to go see Jimmy Cliff at the San Diego State Amphitheater.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Of course, I had to sneak because I didn't think my parents would be down for that. So it added the element of danger. And, I found myself as a pretty sheltered teenager sitting amongst this whole reggae crowd with the air full of pot smoke and really kind of like, why am I here? But that was my first experience with the concert scene.
There you go. And maybe part of why you don't go much since or have gone much since.
Then what followed, maybe it was, I think, a Depeche Mode concert.
Oh, wow.
Cecilia Kapono Hawaiian music, and then Eric Clapton. So it was really kind of a diverse.
Yeah, it's such a huge variety. Oh, my goodness. That's wild. Oh, well, and you kind of get concerts in your own home from Steve on his ukulele pretty often, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. So sweet. Okay, what's a current obsession of yours in any genre?
Well, my mind almost always goes to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I love thinking about where I have been afforded the opportunity to go, and it actually blows my mind. And then I'm always kind of looking like, well, what could be next? Where would I like to go next? And so usually I key in on a few places and things I'd like to do, and then kind of look into the logistics of it. And I love the planning of it. So that's pretty much a constant for me.
I love that. So good. Yeah, you definitely are a huge adventurer. And I know that'll come up a little bit in our conversation as well, or maybe a lot. So, okay, how about Enneagram and love language?
Well, I've taken the Enneagram many, many times, but come up with something different almost every time. And I don't trust myself to answer the questions well enough that really point in any true outcome. So I've laughed at that and just thought, well, I don't know the answer to that. And love language is one that I've always found kind of funny. I had an encounter with my son when he graduated from high school and was going off to Europe by himself to go skateboarding for 3 weeks. And then the weeks leading up to the trip, I was just yelling my love language of preparation to him. I wanted to know that he had things mapped out and he was finding the right places to stay. And finally he just goes, Mom, just plan it out. So boy, I ran with that, and I made reservations on Airbnbs for him, and told him where in the train station to find a SIM card in this train station. I mean, I had it mapped out, and duplicate, one for his backpack, one for it was ridiculous. But he afforded me to yell at him in my love language. And then we got in the car to drive to LAX, and I just backing up right out of the driveway, I launch into my next, preparation for him, like to tell him, don't put your wallet and your passport on the conveyor belt in the TSA. You need to keep it in your bag. And I only got 2 words out. Let me tell you one more thing. He shuts that down. He goes, Mom, what you're telling me is if you don't tell me everything that you know, that I'm going to die out there. My lips just came to rest together silently, and we made it about 8 miles before I said anything else. But in that 8 miles, I realized he probably just wishes I would just be a mom with the love language of baking cookies. Like, why couldn't
Mm,
I listen to what his love language was?
yes.
And I
Yeah.
realized what he really needed to hear from me is that I totally respected him and that believed in him.
Mm,
And here I was over yelling my love language at him,
mm.
had it all
Wow.
wrong.
Well, gosh, it's so true for all of us, though. That is such a journey to be able to look at someone else and speak to them in their language versus what it is that we are projecting ours onto them. So, yeah, not just a Sherry challenge.
I got some help with that though. I loved the verse, quick to listen, slow to speak. And that
Mm,
will lead you probably to
yeah,
slow to anger. And that listening isn't just to them, it's listening to circumstances. It's
yeah.
listening to the voice inside of me that's telling me, how I should walk in this. But we're so quick to form our own opinions and throw them out there at people that we miss what's right in front of us often.
Yeah. Oh, so true. So true. Okay, shifting gears, what's a best movie or show that you've watched in the last year-ish?
Well, I can't get beyond Ted Lasso and Schitt's Creek. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
we would try just to watch one episode per night. Don't get
Impossible.
ahead. Don't eat it all at once. Just, one
Yep.
at a time. And the last one we watched was a series on Netflix called Good Girls.
Oh.
It was, it's not church lady approved, but it was well written. And, I was surprised by the twists and turns it took. I didn't see them coming. So that was fun.
Okay. I haven't actually watched that, so I'll have to take a peek at that one. Okay. Good, good. All right. What has made you laugh or filled your cup in the last day or a few days?
Hmm. Our youngest daughter is away in Michigan on vacation, and she's going to be on a lake, she's an ocean girl, so that was going to be new. And I'd ask her if she'd ever water skied or wakeboarded, and she says, "No, I don't like to be strapped on to something." And she sent us a video of her wakeboarding for the first time super well.
Yeah.
And it just filled my heart with joy at the fearless way she grabs hold of life and is
Mm.
ready to try new things. And so that lit us up pretty good.
Mm, that's sweet. Yeah, that I got to watch that video too, and just she's rocking it. Just so good. So, so good. All right, last one. What's a book that has transformed your life?
Well, I thought about this answer for a bit. And honestly, it's the Bible. I can't get away from it.
Mm,
It is alive
mm,
as a living word of God. It speaks to me in the moment, wherever I am, whatever I need to hear
mm,
at that moment, in such power and truth that, I can't get away from it.
mm.
I can't go to every day. It's
Yeah.
feeding me something new.
Mm, so good. So good. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting us get to know you a little bit. So, friendship. So, I've been so much looking forward to having this conversation with you because you have some perspectives and insights on friendship that are things I haven't really thought about before. And that I would say, I don't know if you would say, but that God has just really put on your heart for friends and friendships. So, a couple different topics that we're going to talk about. But the first one that I'd like for us to talk about is you have such a heart for helping women, in particular, friends, your friends, learn to tell their stories. And you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but I'd love for you to just kind of start by saying, like, why is that important to you? Like, what is the meaning behind that of, helping us tell our stories? Like, what's the value in that?
Well, I think this all kind of started back when our kids were little in school. There was a group of moms at our school that would get together and pray. And my best friend and it was just kind of put before us to help these ladies get out of this mundane life of mothering, laundry, running to Target, going to the grocery
Mm.
store. It was just this cycle of constant serving
Yeah.
and giving. And so we kind of just created and it evolved a weekend away to just let these church ladies put their hair down and not worry about what their influence was in their
Mm.
circles and on their children and laugh and
Mm.
let their hair down. And not everything had to be structured. And so the first year we actually went up to Lake Tahoe when they had this, it's like a marathon weekend. So they have marathons, like you can run a marathon every day, 3 days in a row,
Mm.
or a half marathon. And so we chose to do the 20-mile walk around Lake Tahoe. And some of the ladies
Whoa.
said, no, no, we're doing the 5K. And so everybody did their thing and it almost killed us. But we came out on the other end and enjoyed the next day of just rest and enjoying
Mm.
each other's company. But that was the first year. And so we've gone, this would be our 19th year of getting
Wow.
together in different locations and creating kind of a devotional theme for the
Mm.
weekend and just coming together, eating together, drinking wine together, laughing,
Mm.
and just doing life together. And always with the point that hopefully they're going to come away with something that was inspirational or encouraging to them, besides just the getaway.
Mm. That's so good. I love that so much. And I mean, the intentionality of creating that space, that environment. So, kind of based on that, like, how have you grown? How have they grown as a result of, sharing life in that way with one another?
Wow. Well, I've grown in really learning the hard truths about how our own motivations guide us, and they can either
Mm.
guide us into ways that are really fruitful or guide us into some ways that we become entangled in what outcomes we want.
Hmm.
And I've had to really keep check on myself in those motivations. And
Mm.
this year, this may be the last one that we
Mm.
do because people have grown and their seasons have changed and their lives have changed and we don't intersect in the same places anymore. And
Mm.
my desire to keep things going maybe kind of got left behind in that. And I like the dependability that we've done that every fall.
Yeah.
But there's a time for seasonal change for everybody's lives and to
Huh.
kind of let go of the why I've hung on to things that maybe it was time to let them go.
Yeah.
But with that, there's new birth. There's a birth of something
Yeah.
new that can come out of that. And as long as we hang on to the old, there isn't room for that new to kind of evolve.
Huh. That's so fascinating to me. And I mean, that is something that I hear often in coaching as well as just in friend relationships of like knowing when it is okay to let a friendship season close. So that it's so interesting to hear you say that. I am curious, has that been like an actual vocal conversation of addressing that or talking about it together, or has it just been more of like just a natural parting, if you will?
Probably a little bit of both. My friend and I, who I call her my wife, her brain works differently than mine, so we work well together. But
Hmm.
we always do a debrief, after every year and look at what worked well and what didn't work well, and
Hmm.
hash through our own feelings in the very human nature of it and how we feel about that. And then there's been some ebb and flow. Some years we've had 22 ladies, some we've had four.
Huh.
This year it was going to be two.
Hmm.
So the response back has made it clear it no longer really filled a need in a lot of these
Hmm.
lives. And so then the wrestling just came kind of within myself of letting something die. At the
Huh.
beginning of the year, I was thinking about friendships and the different seasons of them, and I really got this sense of I'm going to stop watering the dead plants.
Hmm.
That, not in an ugly way, but stop
Mm-hmm.
trying to feed into things that weren't producing anything
Mm.
in my life. And not selfishly, but when you're not getting a response also from the other person
Mm.
or people in that equation, that's an indicator as well that maybe it's just time to kind of pull away and with no hard feelings, no anger, no hurt. It's just time to turn the
Yeah.
page.
Wow. Yeah. I think there's something so beautiful in that, but also just so hard of knowing, like, well, is it okay to let go and to not like really try to force that connection to stay there? So that's a tough one. I appreciate your insights on that. One of the things that watching you that I would say is like you to me are the definition of a good friend, and kind of coming back to scripture and talking about the Bible that you brought up and you shared a verse or two. Like I think of the scripture that talks about like mourning with those who mourn, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. And to me, like that is the definition of a good friend, is someone who is able to do that. And I see you as someone who is able to do that. So like help us to understand how do we do that? How have you done that? How do we be a good friend and enter in with others in a season of rejoicing and a season of mourning?
Well, I know in myself and from talking to others, women, and certainly women in my peer group, that our desire to fix and control is mighty.
Mm-hmm.
But I think really friending well has to be governed with our knowledge of what our responsibility is. And on that, I mean our ability to respond.
Yeah.
And when we try to be someone's savior or mother, that's beyond the scope of what I can really do. And so if I try to go in that with that as my role, I'm going to fail. It's not respecting them and their own journey of exploration and consequences of their own choices. So to step back and think, well, my responsibility is to let them know that they're supported by me, that I'm praying for them, but I can't carry their burden any further than the foot of the cross. And then I have to put it down.
Mm.
And that helps me serve them in the
Mm.
very best capacity that I can. But it also relieves me from carrying more pain than I think people are equipped to carry. And it used to be you lived in a community and you had your local newspaper and you knew what your neighbors were going through, maybe, and that's all you had to carry. But now we have worldwide concerns
Yeah.
that are so far beyond the scope of what we can even touch
Mm.
that it becomes grievously burdensome to our hearts.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's what God intended for us. So we can have concerns for what's going on in the far reaches of the world, but it's only to carry it as far as the shoulders of the one who's able to really take responsibility over those things. So
Mm.
when I work well within the role that I have, the position that God has given me, and within my responsibilities in that, I can be effective. If I
Yeah.
try to step outside of that, I am burdened, and my efforts and motives for that person are really contaminated with all of my own reasoning and thoughts, and it's not good.
Hmm. Wow. I don't, there's so many things in that are just, there's so much wisdom and goodness in that. How do you do that though? Because I think we're so, as you said, prone to control, prone to activity and productivity and wanting to do for ourselves and for others. So when you see that, like, how have you been able to step back from that and say, okay, I need to let Jesus handle this?
Well, I think that when the enemy is speaking to us, he's usually telling us, hey, this is all on you. and you're not strong enough. And what speaks into us in that moment is fear, inadequacy, the triggers of all of our own wounds and how we try to cope with life.
Yeah.
And what that does within us is cause immediate dis-ease.
Yeah.
It can be physical, where we feel a tightness in our throat, our hearts begin to race, our mind begins to swirl with thoughts, but immediately we feel knocked off kilter, and it's palpable to us. We can feel it in our bodies. And so I like to say that that's a red flag. Immediately, I know that something is happening that is outside truth. So I have to kind of call out, wait a minute, what's true here? This is a problem that's theirs. And I'm over here with them, loving them. But what I'm feeling in me is my desire to fix or control. And I feel out of control in it. And that's why I'm uncomfortable. So when I feel that feeling of dis-ease within me, that's my immediate notification that I'm looking in for the answer instead of up for the answer. And then God has allowed me a way that I see thinking or instruction or how I should go in a very picture-oriented form in my mind.
Yeah.
So I literally see myself taking a load off my shoulders and putting it down at the foot of the cross. I see that play out in my mind, and that's telling me this is now how you unload this thing that is too heavy for you to bear. And lay it down. And throughout the day, I will have to repicture that over and over and over again as I continue to have these thoughts that make me feel out of control and dis-ease. So that is how it happens within me. I feel that discomfort and know immediately I'm out of my realm and my ability.
So good. And I mean, we all know that feeling, but I think it takes practice to actually like listen to the feeling, understand what the feeling is saying, which totally goes back to, what we talked about a moment ago of being able to tell our stories, that there's an element of understanding ourselves well enough to know what is that feeling saying to me? I mean, really, it's what you're saying is it's taking the focus off of ourselves, which I think is so fascinating because it's really like it's backwards in how we would surface level think of it. Like we think we're focusing on our friend and focusing on her and what she's going through, but really it's a focus on us and what's happening for us in that. So I love that it really is that counterintuitive of I place it at the cross, I place her at the cross, that it really puts the focus back on our friend.
It's this ugly reality of our human nature is that in almost an animalistic way, I think we all operate out of this primal instinct for self-preservation. I'm uncomfortable. I need to feel better in this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's motivated out of this one that I love is hurting and it hurts me. And so I need to do what I need to do to protect me. I think that that's always our first response to something. And we find success out of that when we have a reset or a renewing of our mind in Christ Jesus so that our default response is to call on him. And, I believe that's possible, that we can change our default response. Not that human isn't going to appear suddenly, but the time and space between when it appears in me and I turn it over to God gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. So my time of dis-ease is very momentary before I take it off on my shoulders and put it on his.
Gosh, so beautiful. So, so good. And it is, I mean, we do that in our marital relationships as well, which is just, yeah. And I'm obviously not a mom, and I assume in our mom relationships as well.
The hardest, I think.
Wow. My goodness. Hello, friends. Just popping in super quick. So, did you know that you can connect with the guests of Courage Becomes Her? When I started this podcast, one of the main reasons that I wanted to do so was to encourage and build community and friendship. And each and every one of the guests who have been on Courage Becomes Her with me want to invite you to connect with them. So each and every week in the show notes is contact information for them. Maybe it's an email, sometimes it's even a phone number, but some way for you to reach out and to make contact and connect with the guests, with whether, my friends, my family, etc., that they want to welcome you into their lives as well. So if you want to reach out to Sherry today, you can do that. The contact info for her is in the show notes. And I just really want to encourage you and let you know that that is a true and open invitation for you to do that with each and every one of the guests of Courage Becomes Her. Let's get back to the conversation with Sherry. So you talked about it just a little bit of you are a traveler. Traveling is a big piece for you, and you've brought it into, your friendships as well. So talk about the connection of that, like what that has meant to you, both for yourself, but also, for your friendships.
Well, my first trip, if you'll indulge me a minute, that really took me outside of the box of my comfort zone was the opportunity came up for me to go on a backpacking trip in the Sierras for about 5 or 6 days, finishing with Mount Whitney. And I had never backpacked before, but I had come out of a season of loss, and I was really lost. And so this opportunity came up, and I toyed with it for a few days, like in a fantasy kind of world. And then I thought, well, why not? Why not? And so I went up a couple little mountains around here, and I rented some gear, and I got picked up and transported up to the Sierras and went up there with a group of strangers, essentially.
Wow.
One guy that was hiking the whole John Muir Trail, I knew from high school. And so he asked if anybody wanted to join him. So this gaggle, I think of 6 of us, joined him. So all strangers for me. And the first day of hiking up to over the first mountain pass, I got to the top and I realized, oh, this is where you turn back. This is where you turn around and say, I'm the weakest link. Vote me out of the tribe. I got to get out of here. And they're like, oh, no, we're in this all together. I'm like, oh, no. Because as soon as I go down the other side of this pass, I'm in for 5 days. And the only way you get out is a $50,000 helicopter ride, So I'm in, and I was just filled with fear. I'm out of shape. I'm inequipped. I have no business being there. And the mountain tomorrow is higher than the one today. So I get into camp that night. I'm shaking. I'm fearful. I'm freezing, and I'm hungry. And I got to set up a tent for the first time in the wilderness and cook my dehydrated food and go to bed and get ready for the next day. And I climbed in the tent, and I have to get out in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I'm scared to death of bears. And I was really hyperventilating. I had never had a panic attack, but it was setting in, and I didn't know what was happening, and I was super alone and afraid. And I heard so clearly in the middle of the night, Sherry, how much do you really believe what you say you believe? So all of my theology and all of my philosophy was hitting the fan. And so I had to just go back and go through the promises of God that I would say I believed and ask myself, well, do you really? So the next day I got up and hiked up the highest mountain and reached the top and wept. And these people all think I'm just a nut job. Like they're like, finally, I think they voted for one lady to come over to me and say, are these good tears or bad tears? And what happened on that 4-hour hike in thin air up this mountainside was that God gave me a prayer that I just prayed with every step of the way. I just called it like a cadence prayer of words that he brought to me where I was claiming his power and his promises, and realized, yes, what I would say I believed in, that God moves mountains, he moved this mountain before me. It didn't flatten out on the map, but he gave me what I needed to get up to the top of it, and then broke me with such a humility in the victory and the triumph that he gave me that conquered all the loss that I had just come out of. He met me on that mountaintop in such a profound way that the next 3 days I skipped over mountains, I skipped through the valleys, I peed in the night in the wilderness with no fear. And finished up by climbing a Mount Whitney and coming down on the other side, a changed human being, because I held on to the only thing that I had when I came to the end of myself. And it was true, and it was faithful, and it provided everything I needed. And so finishing that trip, coming home really changed from an insecure little gal to somebody who was empowered with the promise of Almighty God, that he was faithful to keep those promises to me. I just walked differently through life. And so a couple years later, I had set this vision board of what I wanted to do. I'd heard about the Costa Brava Trail in Spain, and I thought, I'd like to go do that. So I kind of shared it with some friends, like, let's make a vision board together and think about this. I want to do this. And they're like, okay, we want to come. But when it came to buying the tickets, they all bailed out. And so Steve encouraged me to go anyway. And I was like, go alone? Like, that's crazy. And so I did. And I walked out of the hotel room that first morning in Blanes, Spain, and started walking up the coast, village to village. And I got lost sometimes. And I would just ask God, I need a sign here. And the very first time I did that, these two ladies came along, and they were holding the guidebook that I knew was for the trail. And although they didn't speak English, we conferred over that guidebook together and figured out the way. And over the years of traveling to places that, as a woman in her late 50s alone, had kind of, by worldly wisdom, no business being, God has walked with me in such profound ways that I begin to laugh when I cry out for a sign at how he's going to show me, because he has revealed guidance for me in the most unlikely ways that bring joy and laughter to my heart.
I love that. I love his creativity and how he uses that for us. So beautiful.
So I realized I didn't answer your question.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I am long of wind, but through putting myself out into risky situations and seeing how God revealed his truth to me and his provision for me and everything that I needed, and literally coming home changed every time. Steve goes, whatever happened out there, go get more of that. So that really gave me the freedom to keep exploring. And every place I went, there would be some new lesson that God revealed to me about myself and about how I can depend on him. And so the lessons kept coming. And the more risk I took, the more my default response and reaction was trust. And so I could find myself in the mountains of Ecuador alone with no real map, trusting that he is going to guide me. He's going to show me his goodness along the way. And so that has begun to create a story within me that is worth telling and retelling. It excites me to hear it again and to relive it. And I think it's a good story.
I agree. It's so beautiful.
So I was able to share with my lady friends at one retreat last year about the elements that make up for a good story, and encourage them in that, so that they would be encouraged and inspired to do some risky things in their lives and allow God to come in and co-author a story that's worth telling and retelling. That can be risky, like extending forgiveness to someone who's really hurt you and hasn't asked for it, or it can be jumping out of a plane. The risk isn't always going to be the same, but it's one of the elements that make up a good story.
It's so good. So, so good. And I think, I mean, I love that you said that of it is important to recognize that risk looks different for each of us. And even using your own story, it changes and grows over time as we get more comfortable with one thing, you know, that might lead to something that, you know, looks even riskier or looks different than our previous season. So so good. So good. And such a beautiful opportunity to encourage other women, encourage our friends on their journey and in their story. I love that so, so much. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about in kind of this journey of friendships and telling our story and, you know, bearing each other's burdens, but by going through the cross that we haven't talked about?
You know, as I was thinking about, the word friend and how it's come to have some different meanings in the day of social media and everything. And there are times when our circle of friendship is small and very intimate, and our willingness or ability to be really vulnerable needs to be in a smaller space. And then we've got our friends on social media, and they can number in the thousands, and they may be people we don't even know. But within that, our circle of influence is bigger. Whether we could count on them to take our burden to the cross or not, they are our circle of influence. And that can be huge. If you get retweeted, or shared, that circle of influence grows. And so I think our effectiveness is really based on our willingness to be transparent and vulnerable, even in exponential numbers, to our circle of influence, and to use the power of the story that God is co-authoring in our lives, understanding that it resonates with more people than we imagine because we are all in the human experience together. And really just being willing to be used to say it out loud, and that saying it out loud and being transparent enables other people to feel safe in saying their story out loud.
Yeah.
And I think that can be one of the most powerful tools, and making people feel like they're not alone in what they're experiencing, and it can be safe to share it with others.
So true. So, so true. So good. Well, you clearly are not a stranger to being courageous. And I love that I get to be inspired from you and your courage and your bravery and, working through fear. So who or what is inspiring courage in you right now and in this season?
Well, I'm in a season of a really small circle of people around me and voices that I'm allowing to speak to me. And yesterday I was reminded of the story of Esther and how circumstance and situations had allowed her to come into a space where she had some influence. And in that space, she had to do battle within herself with the desire to preserve herself and protect her standing and her position, or to risk it all for something much greater than she was and where she lived. And it could come with a complete and total sacrifice. It came with total uncertainty for where that road was going to lead, and it could just lead to her destruction. And so she had to make an evaluation of what was her greatest calling in that moment. Was it herself, or was it for something beyond herself? And she chose what was beyond herself. And she stuck her neck out, and she took the risk. And much in the same way as Peter stepping out of the boat and into the water, stepping out of the natural allows and unleashes the supernatural to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we stay in that natural world where self-preservation is our highest calling and our natural default response, and we let that guide us, we will never be free to experience the mountaintops of God's supernatural activity in and through our lives.
Mm.
And we are going to miss out on such a great adventure. It's the greatest adventure of our lives. So it was Esther that came to me yesterday is like, yeah, I want to live like that with my neck out for whatever God wants to use it for, even though I cannot see the outcome and I'm terrified.
Mm. Mm.
But in that, I know whatever comes along the way that He's with me.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, you most definitely do stick your neck out. And I'm so grateful for you to share with us today and that we get to learn from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share.
You know, today's conversation with Sherry just reminds me that we are all in different seasons in our friendships. And Sherry and I both are in a season right now where our friendship circles are small and we are intentionally keeping it small because of things that are happening in our lives and going on for us, and just need to, you know, kind of be in that space of smallness and, you know, super tight friends, close-knit friends, trusted friends. And then there are those of you who, like Jen and Laura from last week's episode, are in that mom of toddlers space and totally need your friendship circle to support you and help you as you are entering into things that are so foreign and so new and unknown. Or maybe even like Nancy from 2 weeks ago, you're in a season where you are expanding your friendship circle and life is just open for you from the sense of being able to have the time to pour into friends through activities and Bible study and groups, even like my mom from a few weeks ago, of just, you know, so many different areas of life that you have that time and that space and that energy to, you know, pour into a variety of things. So I want to say that just to let you know that whatever season you are in your friendships is not wrong, and that we each have different spaces that we need to be in at different times in our lives, depending upon what is going on for us. And that's part of why I wanted to bring such a variety of women to us through this topic of friendship, of different seasons of life, stages of life, ages of life, to really just remind us that there is no one set way to do friendship. There is no one right way to do friendship, and that we each are navigating through that as best we can, you know, through the various seasons that we're in. So I'm so grateful for Sherry and all that she shared with us today. There is just so much that I will continue to be meditating over and gnawing on over the next few weeks and months, particularly this topic of self-focus and self-preservation through friendship, which that's going to come up in an upcoming episode again as well a little bit, is just something that is so helpful to me and something that I know I personally am working through. So I know through today's conversation with Sherry that you found that thing that you can kind of meditate on and ponder on and really focus on as you think about this season of life that you're in regard to your friendships. So thanks so much. And we will be back next week to talk more about friendship. What an honor to help you to cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in your life and work. Thank you so much for inviting me to journey with you. I look forward to being back with you next week, where we'll hear another story from a woman whom I love and am inspired by and look forward to learning from.